We are back with another contestant from Survivor All Stars. Amanda, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Paul.
Well, great to see you again, Amanda.
Good to see you as well.
Let's just jump right into things. You provided a lot of great moments on the show. What do you have to say for yourself? How do you think the whole Survivor All Stars experience turned out for you?
It was good. I'm a little appalled at how big my eyes can get in stressful situations. Glad that came across on camera. Um, but yeah, it was fun. It was definitely better than the first time around. So it's been fun to watch it back and kind of see everyone talking as opposed to just being in my own game. So
So, what's been the most surprising thing watching yourself?
Um, probably how into it I was. Like I knew that I was into it, but I definitely could see my persona being a lot more like hyper than other people's. Like even compared to like Shandy's interviews or Martha, like very low key and kind of keeping an even keel. And then I feel like I was a little bit more amped up in terms of what was going on. But then again, that's just my personality. So
Well,
not
where did that
always.
emotion come from in the game? Because you obviously didn't play the game that long enough last time to get that fired up about the game. But
Yeah.
what was the
Well,
trigger this season?
the trigger was definitely playing with people that I was close to, but that weren't necessarily just gunning to get me off right away. So season one, I think that happened, and this time I actually got a chance to play, and so I think that more of those feelings of being targeted by people who I was close to came to the forefront. So I think a lot of it probably came from having Brent in, and then having Brent get voted out, and then instantly being a target. So I think Kyle and Mike got a lot more of my resentment than I intended. But then again, I also like played it up on the camera. It's not like I was actually angry with them outside of the game, but it just provided a good outlet for spicing up the TV a little bit. So I decided to run with it.
So let's talk a minute about that Brent elimination because it seemed like at the time when it happened, you said, okay, yeah, fine, whatever, it's the game, it happens, whatever. But then, within a couple hours, it was like some real raw emotions.
Well, I think it was a little bit of both. I think I was upset about it because I felt that it wasn't necessary for Mike to do so. And he can say all he wants about Brett was targeting me, but they never really approached each other and worked it out. So it was both of their faults on that in that respect. So part of it was emotional, but part of it was also strategic because I knew that the girls were not going to break with each other, and I knew that that made Mike and Kyle more susceptible to being cut from the game. So I thought the more I could expose their gameplay and how the girls didn't necessarily fit into it the way that they thought that they did, the more that they could see that I was being honest with them. Um, so I think some people thought that that was manipulative, but most of it was pure emotion. It just happened to work to my benefit strategically because I think Shandy especially felt like she was on the outs with the guys. So it worked to my advantage, but
So
yeah, definitely.
do you think things would have worked out better for you had you and Brent started on the same tribe, or do you think you would have been targeted even sooner?
I think it depends because even when Brett was gone, I was a target. So I don't think like there was nothing that I could do to avoid that. I mean, up until Brett was out, it was we can't let Brett and Amanda get together. And then when Brett was out, it was still Amanda's too big of a threat. So it's like I couldn't really win in terms of people targeting me. Um, Maybe it would have been a little bit better in terms of keeping people's anxiety about it because if we were working together and making alliances, it wasn't something that they needed to fear out front. But at the same time, it might have been easier for them to just cut us earlier. So I don't know. I think it was easier for me to say, look, Brent's out of the game now. I haven't been playing with him the whole time. You can't use that as an excuse anymore since we were on separate tribes. But yeah, I think I would have gone before Brent if we had been at the same time. I think that they would have used that as an excuse to get me out sooner. So maybe for my game, it made more sense that we weren't on the same time. But
So let's talk about that final eight vote when he voted off Kyle. After that episode aired, there was a lot of speculation by people watching about how genuine your reaction was, how much of it was general emotion, how much of it was manipulation to stay in the game. Can you talk about that vote and how Kyle ended up going home?
yeah. So in terms of the vote itself, I mean, we literally talked about it as we were walking. Like the scene where Martha is coming up to me under the tarp and as I was getting my bag to walk to tribal council. So that is what I hear I'm going. Sigrid approaches me, tells me I can use the idol, and I tell her no. Um, because it was hers and because it didn't make sense for them to jeopardize an idol use when we still would be in the minority after the vote. Like, to me, it didn't make strategic sense. So I went in thinking I was going to go until we walked across the bridge, and Shandy says, let's vote for Kyle, let's do this. So at that point, it was really up in the air, like, in terms of genuine emotion that he was going, like, it was truly felt because I didn't think he was going to go. In terms of manipulation, I mean, what other option do I have? I mean, people can call it manipulative all they want to, but I didn't have any other targets. And regardless of what Kyle said, he was the biggest physical threat out there, and it was the easiest pitch to make. But raw emotion, I was upset with him for turning on Brent. So it was a mixture of both. But I was definitely still surprised that he went, because I told Sigrid specifically not to use her idol for me, even if we were certain that I was going to go. So I felt I had a 50-50 shot at that point. So any emotion or surprise that I had was definitely legitimate.
And then, so the next round, when you guys voted off Michael, you were very persistent that you were only going to be voting for Michael, which led for someone like Darren to say that Amanda's judgment's being clouded. We could use this opportunity to vote someone off. Did that hinder your game at all, voting out Michael next?
I don't think it hindered my game. And the thing is Darren is coming from a perspective where he had a potentially closer alliance with Mike than I ever could possibly imagine. So what made more sense in terms of my judgment being clouded was the next vote. And at that point, none of us were on our game. But for Mike's vote, it made the most sense because that was still a pitch that I could make to Shandy. I could say, Shandy, it doesn't make sense to keep Mike around. I couldn't say, Shandy, it doesn't make sense to keep Martha around. And I couldn't trust Mike to vote with us. I could trust Shandy to vote with us if it was in the best interest, but Mike was like a total wild card. I didn't even know if he was going to vote with Martha and Maggie in that way. He was so angry with them that I didn't know where his vote would go. And honestly, after that confrontation, I think it made sense for everyone involved to vote out either Mike or I, because no one wants to spend another day with like awkward tension. So I don't think my judgment was clouded. I think Darren was thinking a step ahead, which was good, but then when he needed to think a step ahead with that next vote, he didn't, and that's why we all got screwed over, I think.
Yeah, well, so you just alluded to it. What was that final six tribal council like? Because the strategy leading up to it was complicated, even for a viewer to watch what was happening.
Well, see, the thing is that they had thought not only one step ahead, but two, because they not only thought, okay, we're not going to vote the way that they think we're going to vote, but we're going to split our votes to flush out the idol that we know that they have. That further complicated matters when Darren pulls out his idol and then they know for sure that it's in his possession. So it further compromised our position and also cemented what they were doing as strategic. Now, for us to split our votes at that time or completely change to Martha wasn't something that we considered for two reasons. One, we didn't know who had the idol if they had it. It could have been Martha or Maggie. So it didn't make sense for us to throw all of our votes in one pot. And number two, we had no reason to distrust Shandy. And it's so easy to say, oh my God, why didn't you split the votes? Like, I think definitely Darren and I have been hardest on ourselves for that. But there was no way we could have thought 3 steps ahead unless we did not trust Shandy and we had started thinking that way. I think if I hadn't won immunity, I would have been a lot more likely to think in that manner because I would have felt more vulnerable, but I didn't feel vulnerable. And my head wasn't there. And Darren and Shandy had their own things, so he was feeling comfortable. And Sigrid trusted us, that we had felt out the situation. So, yeah, it was the best play.
Yeah.
It honestly was. So, I mean, there's something we could have done about it, but only if it had been. And then that episode would have been out of control in terms of us trying to counter that move. So maybe it's for us that we just were too stupid and so I would have happened.
So at the final 5, you finally couldn't shake the feeling that everyone was feeling of how threatened they were by you. But assuming that Shandy and Darren would have voted with you, someone writes in here and asks that had Maggie gone at the final 5, well, what would your game plan been at the final 4? Would Martha have gone next, and then who would you have taken to the finals?
So forced a tie. Um, and then between the two of us decided who we thought was the least likely to beat us in a final. So at that point, I think it might have made the most sense to target Shandy. Um, and I think that Darren was very smart in his gameplay in terms of trying to change the focus to Shandy. And really, what I was trying to explain to Shandy with voting with me is that if I'm gone, you're the main target. I mean, keeping me around keeps the heat off of you, but when you vote me off, I can guarantee they'll target you. And keeping someone like Maggie in the game only adds fuel to the fire. I mean, the opposite strategy would have been trying to approach Maggie to make a big move because she already didn't trust Shandy. But I could not talk to her because Martha wouldn't let her talk. So, I mean, that was just like, it wasn't even a possibility. It literally was trying to get by a bulldog because I think Martha knew that it wasn't necessarily in Maggie's best interest to keep Shandy, even if it was hers. So I would have probably ended up, if all went well, targeting Shandy and then hopefully winning the final immunity and taking Darren. I think it would have been harder to beat Darren because I think he had a lot of sympathy from the jurors, but at the same time, I don't know. Like people keep saying I would have won no matter who I was going against, which is hard for me to perceive. But after watching the season, I definitely think I could have made a strong pitch for myself. But I would have taken Darren out of loyalty in the end.
So touching again on Maggie here, someone wrote in, not necessarily for you, but maybe someone who you could get us in contact with. Why didn't Maggie go out earlier? If everyone knew Martha and Maggie were going to get together, you even said it yourself several times in the game that we knew Maggie and Martha were going to work together. Why weren't Maggie and Martha targeted, and why didn't Brent see that as an option early on in the game?
Well, he's actually here, so why don't
Yeah, get him. This is
directly?
a special 2-for-1 2-for-1 interview.
Lucky you, we live together. So.
Bonus footage. Hello, Brent.
Hi, Paul.
Hi. So are you going to defend yourself here? Why didn't you take out Maggie?
Sure. So at that point in the game, Maggie, I don't think was a threat to me. What got me in the end was the tribe swap, where um, Martha and Mike were sent over to my tribe, and then with that swap, I immediately lost Kyle, who went with Mike, and Maggie and Martha went together. But um, I think that had I tried to vote out Maggie beforehand, it would have flipped on me, and I would have been going home. That's exactly what I was in the majority alliance, at that time, and that's exactly why Bryce was voted out. Early on, he tried to flip, and he said, "Well, hey, we should get Shandy out." And everybody thought, "Ooh, why is he trying to flip so early?" Because at that point, it was either him or Connor that we were going to vote out, and he flipped immediately, and everybody said, "Ooh, that makes me uncomfortable. We're going to vote out Bryce."
Mm-hmm.
So I think that Maggie was never a big enough threat for me to target her. I didn't make it far enough to me to target Maggie.
Well, according to the YouTube comments, Chris Abbey, I believe, left us a comment here and said that he warned you and Kyle to take out Maggie early on. Is that true?
Chris said a lot of things. He warned us about a lot of things, but I would take his advice with a grain of salt. I think that certainly watching the season as it progresses, it's frustrating to watch how Maggie and Martha immediately do get together. But for myself, I want to make the case that it was never in my best interest to try and flip on Maggie that early on. Certainly,
Yeah.
if I made it farther, I would have tried to flip on her and
Yeah.
break that alliance up. But
So, what'd you think of watching Amanda on the show once you were out? I know she made you watch all the episodes.
she did. Of course, I'm rooting for her and happy to watch her get really fired up and somewhat defend my honor, but mostly just get the chance to really play the game because as fans of prior mountains might know, I voted her out early on, and so she never even got the opportunity really to play, and so we have sort of such
And so
circumstances.
she never voted you off. You have that up on her. You voted her out, but she's never voted you out.
Shows what a forgiving person I am. So.
Well, she never had the chance.
That's true.
And
So the last thing I want to touch on with both you guys here is one, Amanda, went into your ultimate decision to vote for Shandy to win over Martha, and then I want to ask Brent who he would have voted for to win now that he's seen the season.
So I went in. I think I was one of the only people who went in completely not knowing who I was going to vote for. Because it's easy to make a case for someone else in your head and say these are the things you should say. This is absolutely a strategy you should promote. And I wanted Martha to do that. I think that with some of the questions, especially mine, she kind of glossed over people she didn't vote for instead of explaining why she didn't vote for them. Because I think that's really what distinguished her strategy from Shandy's, because they didn't agree. And I think that Shandy was able to use what Martha wasn't saying to her advantage to make it seem like she was controlling alliances. While Martha's counter to that would be, "Nuh-uh, you're the vote that people needed, but I was the one guiding the game in terms of who should go when, why they should go." But Martha never said that. And if she had, I think I would have been a lot more likely to vote for her, because I did see her as more of a game guider than Shandy. Not to say that Shandy wasn't a strategist, but she was in a very different way. But at the end, Martha didn't distinguish herself, and Shandy really did, and she really brought her end game. She saved her energy. I think Martha was spent by the end, and she really showed it. She was just happy to get the final two, but she should have been in it to win it, and that's why I think her alliance with Shandy is what ultimately made it so she wouldn't win the game. She aligned herself with someone who was in it to win it instead of someone who would just willingly lay back and say, "Oh, thank goodness I'm at the final two." She needed to step it up and convince me, and she did it. Not to say she didn't play a great game, but she didn't sell it.
And who would you have voted for, Brent?
Um, I would have voted for Shandy, and it would have been an easy decision for me. Um, it's there are lots of emotions that factor in where I trusted Shandy more than I trusted Maggie or Martha when I was in the game. But I think watching the whole season play out, I do think that Shandy was able to weave through all of these alliances. Um, to some extent, it might have been easy for her to do that because everybody wanted her, everyone needed her. But I think she played a very good game and was in control of it, or in control of herself for the whole game. Maybe it's a bit hard to compare uh, Martha and Shandy because of the age difference and the emotional maturity. Um, but I think in the end, Shandy really made a good case for herself, as Amanda had said, and I think she played a consistently good game. Whereas, from my perspective, Martha had one amazing move that did change the game and got Amanda out. But I think that Shandy was the more consistent player, and that would have been my vote.
Okay, well, any last thoughts you guys have on the entire Survivor experience as a whole?
It was a lot of fun. I mean, and I think it's a really good season because there's so many people to root for, and there's so many people that at the same time you just want to get out so badly at certain points, right? Where you're just like their games are revealed and you kind of see like where everyone's going. And I think ultimately I was really happy with the way it turned out. I mean, I think people viewed me as a threat, but I don't think there was a lot of understanding of why I was making the moves that I was making. And the reason why I chose the people to align with that I did is because one, I wanted to play with them, and two, I thought they deserved it. Um, and that's kind of a weird way to play Survivor. Maybe that's not a winning strategy, which obviously it wasn't. But at the same time, I wasn't as heartbroken about losing as I think other people would have been. So maybe people viewed it as manipulative, but I viewed it as really trying to get people who I thought deserved to win the farthest in the game by aligning with them and by being as loyal as I could have Survivor.
Well, now I want to congratulate you, Brent. Now you don't have to hear Amanda talk about Survivor ever again now that this interview's
That's
over.
not true. I'm gonna apply for the real show, and then he'll never.
I was going to say, I think you guys both should go on Blood versus Water, too.
Yes.
We might have future CBS Survivor stars in front of us right here. Well, I want to thank you both for taking time to talk to us, and congratulations on a job well done.
Thanks, Paul.
Uh-huh.